The year is 1787. Across the rolling green hills of what would one day be called KwaZulu-Natal, the southern African landscape stretches endlessly, grasslands rippling like ocean waves beneath the wind, dotted with scattered homesteads where small clans live in fragile peace. This is a world of cattle herders and warriors, where a man's honor is measured in livestock and loyalty, where chieftains rule over modest territories, and where the rhythm of life has remained unchanged for generations. But beneath this deceptive tranquility, something is stirring. A storm is gathering on the horizon, carried not by the clouds but by the cry of a newborn child, a child whose very existence will be considered a scandal, whose name will become a curse before it becomes a legend. His name is Shaka, and before his life ends, he will shatter the old world and forge a new one in blood and iron. In the Zulu clan, a minor, unremarkable group among dozens scattered across the region, a woman named Nandi gives birth to a son. The father is Senzanga Kona, the Zulu chieftain, but this is no celebrated union. The pregnancy occurred before proper marriage rites were completed, a violation of custom that brings shame upon both families. When elders question Nandi's swelling belly, they are told she suffers from an intestinal beetle called Shaka. It is meant as a dismissal, a way to save face. But when the child is born, the name sticks. Shaka, the beetle, the unwanted thing. From his earliest moments, Shaka is marked by rejection. His father, Senzanga Kona, reluctantly acknowledges the boy, but provides no protection from the whispers and mockery that follow him. Nandi and her son are tolerated, but never truly welcomed into the Zulu kraals. They exist on the margins, visible yet invisible, present yet perpetually exiled. As Shaka grows from infant to boy, the cruelty intensifies. Other children taunt him for his illegitimacy. Adults speak about him as though he cannot hear, discussing the shame his birth brought to the chieftain. Every glance carries judgment. Every word drips with disdain. His mother, Nandi, fierce and protective, shields him as best she can, but even her love cannot erase the fundamental truth of their situation. They are outcasts in their own homeland. When Shaka is 6 years old, the situation becomes untenable. Senzanga Kona, tired of the embarrassment and pressure from his other wives and advisors, sends Nandi and Shaka away. They are expelled from the Zulu clan entirely, forced to seek refuge among Nandi's people, the Langeni. But exile offers no sanctuary. The Langeni take them in, not out of compassion but out of obligation to kinship ties, and they make certain that Nandi and Shaka know they are burdens. The boy who was unwanted among the Zulu becomes equally unwanted among the Langeni. He is mocked for his origins, for his mother's disgrace, for the mere fact of his existence. During a severe drought, when cattle die and crops fail, the accusations turn vicious. Some blame Nandi and her cursed son for the misfortune. The whispers grow darker, the isolation deepens. Shaka, now approaching adolescence, grows lean and hard. He tends cattle in the hills, far from the center of the homestead, where the other boys will not have to look at him. He learns to endure hunger, cold, and loneliness. But more than that, he learns something else, something that will define everything that follows. He learns to hate, not the petty hatred of a child nursing wounded pride, but something colder, sharper, more dangerous. A hatred born from injustice repeated so many times it becomes unbearable. A hatred that does not seek comfort or forgiveness, but transformation of himself, of the world that rejected him. In the hills, alone with the cattle, Shaka begins to fight, not against enemies but against himself. He runs until his lungs burn, climbs until his hands bleed, practices with sticks and stones until his movements become fluid and precise. He watches the way cattle move, the way predators hunt, the way storms sweep across the plains with unstoppable force. He is teaching himself to become something more than the outcast boy. He is teaching himself to become a weapon. When Shaka is 15, his mother secures refuge with yet another clan, the Mathethwa, led by the powerful chieftain Dingiswayo. This time, their reception is different. Dingiswayo is not like other chiefs. He is a visionary, a leader who dreams of unifying the fractured clans into something greater. He has traveled beyond the region, seen different peoples and different ways of organizing power. He understands that the future belongs not to isolated homesteads, but to coalitions, to disciplined armies, to centralized authority. And when Dingiswayo looks at the tall, silent young man who arrives with Nandi, he sees something others have missed. He sees potential. Shaka is inducted into Dingiswayo's Ibutho, a regimental system where young men are organized into age-based military units. Here, for the first time in his life, Shaka finds something resembling belonging. Not acceptance born of affection, but respect, earned through skill. And Shaka possesses skill in abundance. On the training grounds, he is ferocious. He masters the traditional fighting techniques quickly, then begins to question them. The conventional weapons of the region are long throwing spears, designed for hurling at enemies from a distance before closing for brief, chaotic melees. Battles are often ritualistic affairs, displays of courage with relatively few casualties, where warriors throw spears, shout insults, and occasionally someone gets hurt before both sides withdraw. Shaka looks at this system and sees inefficiency, waste, weakness. Why throw your weapon away? Why give your enemy the chance to throw it back? Why maintain distance when proximity means control? These questions lead to experimentation. In secret, away from the watchful eyes of traditional instructors, Shaka begins to develop something new. He takes a spear and shortens the shaft drastically, widening the blade until it resembles a sword more than a javelin. The result is a weapon designed not for throwing but for stabbing, a short, brutal instrument that requires the warrior to close distance, to engage directly, to commit fully to the kill. He calls it the Ikluwa, a name that mimics the sucking sound the blade makes when withdrawn from flesh. With the Ikluwa, combat changes entirely. The warrior must be close enough to see the enemy's eyes, close enough to feel their breath. There is no safety of distance, no possibility of retreat without commitment. The Ikluwa demands courage, discipline, and absolute confidence in one's ability to dominate at close quarters. Shaka trains with his new weapon obsessively. He develops techniques for using it in conjunction with a large cowhide shield, not just for defense but as an offensive tool to hook an opponent's shield aside, exposing the body for a fatal thrust. He practices the movements until they become instinctive, until the Ikluwa becomes an extension of his own arm. When Dingiswayo's regiments go to war, Shaka distinguishes himself immediately. While other warriors hang back, throwing spears from relative safety, Shaka charges forward, shield up, Ikluwa ready. He crashes into enemy formations like a thunderbolt, disrupting their lines, killing with brutal efficiency. His ferocity is terrifying. His success is undeniable. Warriors begin to notice, then commanders, then Dingiswayo himself. The outcast boy, the child no one wanted, has become the most dangerous fighter in the Mathathwa army. But Shaka's ambitions extend far beyond personal glory. As he fights in Dingiswayo's wars, his mind is working, analyzing, deconstructing the nature of warfare itself. He sees that traditional African combat is hobbled by outdated conventions, rituals that limit lethality, social structures that prevent true military discipline, leadership that relies on kinship rather than merit. He begins to envision something different. An army where every warrior fights like he does, with discipline, with modern weapons, with absolute commitment. An army where victory is not a matter of chance or individual bravery, but of systematic superiority. An army that does not merely defeat enemies, but obliterates them. These thoughts remain private, seeds planted in fertile soil, waiting for the right moment to bloom. That moment is coming, though Shaka does not yet know it. In 1816, Senzangakona, the Zulu chieftain Shaka's father, the man who cast him out, died. The succession falls to one of Senzangakona's sons, Shaka's half-brother. But Dingiswayo, recognizing the potential waste of leaving his finest warrior in a subordinate position, intervenes. With the support of the Methwa military machine, Dingiswayo installs Shaka as the new chief of the Zulu clan. The outcast returns home, not as a beggar seeking acceptance, but as a conqueror claiming his birthright. Those who mocked him, who called him the beetle, who drove him and his mother into exile, they must now kneel before him. Shaka does not forgive, he does not forget, but neither does he waste time on petty revenge. He has something far more important to do. He is going to build an empire. Shaka assumes leadership of the Zulu clan with a clarity of purpose that shocks the elders. This is not a young chief seeking to maintain tradition and navigate clan politics with cautious diplomacy. This is something else entirely, a leader who arrives with a vision fully formed and the will to implement it regardless of resistance. His first acts are surgical and ruthless. He identifies those who opposed him, who supported his half-brother's claim, who represent the old order. Some are executed. Others are stripped of authority and integrated into new structures where traditional power means nothing. The message is unmistakable, the past is dead, and those who cling to it will die with it. Then Shaka turns his attention to the real work, the transformation of the Zulu from a minor clan into a military power. The traditional Ibutho system is radically expanded and reorganized. Young men are no longer called up sporadically for cattle raids or ritual combat. They are conscripted into permanent regiments, housed in military kraals away from their families, forbidden to marry until they have proven themselves in battle. The regimental system becomes the foundation of identity. Warriors belong to their unit first, their birth clan second. Discipline becomes absolute. There is no room for individual glory-seeking or independent action. Every warrior must move in perfect coordination with his comrades, forming a machine where each part functions in precise harmony with the whole. Those who cannot or will not adapt are eliminated, not sent home, but killed, their weakness purged from the system. The Ikilva is introduced across all regiments. Every warrior must abandon the long throwing spear and master the short stabbing blade. At first, there is resistance. Older warriors grumble that this new weapon is cowardly, that real men fight from a distance, that Shaka is perverting tradition. Shaka's response is practical and brutal. He organizes a demonstration battle, pitting warriors armed with traditional weapons against a unit trained in his methods. The Iklua warriors close distance rapidly, use their shields to create openings, and slaughter their opponents in minutes. There are no further complaints. Alongside the Iklua, Shaka makes another controversial change. He orders warriors to discard their sandals. The logic is simple. Sandals slow you down, limit mobility, create dependency on manufactured goods that can be lost or damaged. Barefoot warriors are faster, tougher, and more self-sufficient. To toughen their feet, Shaka drives his men on brutal, forced marches across thorny ground. Those who cannot keep pace, whose feet blister and bleed until they collapse, are killed. It is not cruelty for cruelty's sake, but ruthless pragmatism. An army marches at the speed of its slowest member, and Shaka will not tolerate slowness. The tactics of warfare are completely reimagined. Shaka develops what will later be called the horns of the buffalo formation, a sophisticated encirclement strategy where the army divides into 4 parts. The chest engages the enemy head-on, fixing them in place. The horns sweep around the flanks to encircle from both sides. The loins, a reserve force, sits behind the chest, ready to reinforce wherever needed, while facing away from battle to avoid premature excitement. This is not the chaotic, individualistic combat of tradition. This is coordinated, disciplined warfare designed to surround, isolate, and annihilate. Shaka's warriors begin training for this new reality. They drill endlessly, practicing formations, learning to move as one body, mastering the art of the killing blow. The elderly and infirm are not exempted from service, but integrated into logistics, carrying supplies, maintaining equipment, managing the cattle that follow the army. Everything is subordinated to military efficiency. Marriage is controlled by the state. Warriors cannot take wives until Shaka grants permission, usually after significant battlefield success. This serves multiple purposes. It keeps young men focused on war rather than family, creates intense competition for favor and advancement, and ensures that the rewards of peace are privileges earned through service rather than birthrights. Within 2 years, the Zulu were transformed. What was once a minor clan of perhaps 1,500 people has become the core of a disciplined military machine capable of fielding thousands of warriors who move, fight, and kill with unprecedented coordination and lethality. But transformation brings enemies. Other clans watch Shaka's rise with growing alarm. They see the old social order being dismantled, the familiar rhythms of life disrupted by this upstart who seems intent on turning the entire region into an armed camp. Some attempt diplomacy, sending emissaries to negotiate alliances or compromises. Shaka's response is consistent: submit completely or be destroyed. There is no middle ground, no room for autonomous neighbors or friendly rivals. In Shaka's vision, there is only the Zulu nation expanding, absorbing, dominating, and those who do not yet know they will be conquered. The wars begin. What follows is the Mfecane, the crushing, a period of warfare and upheaval so intense it will reshape the demographics, politics, and cultures of southern Africa for generations. It begins with nearby clans. Shaka identifies targets methodically, prioritizing those who represent threats or possess resources. His armies strike with overwhelming speed and violence. The horns of the buffalo formation proves devastatingly effective. Enemies find themselves engaged from the front, while Zulu warriors sweep around their flanks, completing the encirclement before they realize what's happening. Traditional defensive tactics are useless. Clans accustomed to ritualistic combat, where casualties are light and wars are decided more by negotiation than slaughter, have no framework for understanding what Shaka's army represents. They enter battle expecting a test of courage with manageable risk. They encounter extermination. The Zulu do not stop when enemies retreat. They pursue relentlessly, hunting down survivors, capturing cattle, and occupying territory. Conquered peoples are given a stark choice: integration or death. Those who submit, completely abandoning their former identities, swearing absolute loyalty to Shaka, joining the Zulu regiments, are absorbed into the growing nation. Those who resist or hesitate are killed without mercy. Shaka's personal involvement in these campaigns is total. He does not lead from the rear, issuing orders and waiting for reports. He marches with his men, fights alongside them, shares their hardships. His physical presence on the battlefield is magnetic and terrifying, a towering figure moving through combat with the Iklewa flashing, seemingly immune to fear or fatigue. Warriors witness their chief killing with his own hands, taking risks, demonstrating the very behaviors he demands from them. It creates a bond deeper than traditional loyalty, a combination of respect, fear, and something approaching religious awe. As victories accumulate, the Zulu nation grows exponentially. Conquered clans bring their young men into the regimental system, their cattle into the herds, their territory into the expanding domain. What was a clan of 1,500 becomes a nation of 10,000, then 50,000, then more. But growth creates new challenges. As the Zulu expand, they encounter larger, more powerful enemies. Clans that once ignored the distant Zulu now find them at their borders, making the same uncompromising demands: submit or die. Some choose submission, others choose to fight. The Ndwandwe, a powerful confederation led by the ambitious chief Zwaide, become Shaka's most dangerous adversary. Zwaide has his own ambitions of regional dominance, his own military innovations, his own network of alliances. When Shaka's expansion brings the two powers into conflict, war becomes inevitable. In 1818, Dingiswayo Shaka's patron, the man who first recognized his potential, was captured and killed by Zwide's forces. It is a devastating blow. Dingiswayo was not merely an ally, but the closest thing to a father figure Shaka ever knew. His death leaves a vacuum in the regional power structure. Shaka fills it. He absorbs the Methathwa Confederation, integrating their armies into his own, claiming leadership over all the peoples Dingiswayo once protected. The Zulu nation, already formidable, becomes the dominant power in the region almost overnight. But Zwide is not finished. He assembles a massive army, perhaps 20,000 warriors, and marches against the Zulu, determined to crush Shaka before he becomes unstoppable. The Battle of Gwokli Hill in 1818 was the first major test of Shaka's military system against a peer opponent. Zwide's forces are vast, disciplined, and battle-hardened. They outnumber the Zulu significantly. Traditional wisdom suggests Shaka should avoid direct confrontation, seek allies, and negotiate. Instead, Shaka chooses ground carefully and prepares to fight. He positions his army on Gwokli Hill, a defensible height that negates the Ndwandwe numerical advantage. When Zwide's forces attack uphill, they find themselves compressed, unable to bring their full numbers to bear. The Zulu defense is ferocious. Warriors fight in tight formations, iklas stabbing upward at enemies, struggling up the slope, shields creating an impenetrable wall. The Ndwandwe attacked repeatedly, each assault breaking against Zulu discipline like waves against stone. Bodies pile up on the hillside, hours pass, the sun beats down mercilessly. Casualties mount on both sides, but the Zulu line holds. As the Ndwandwe begin to exhaust themselves, Shaka unleashes his counterattack. Fresh reserves surge down the hill, crashing into tired enemies, the horns of the buffalo formation executing perfectly despite the chaos. The Ndwandwe line fragments, then collapses entirely. What began as an organized retreat becomes a rout. The Zulu pursued without mercy, cutting down fleeing warriors, capturing cattle and supplies, destroying any possibility of the Ndwandwe regrouping. But Shaka is not satisfied with victory. He understands that defeated enemies who survive will regroup, rebuild, and return. Mercy is not compassion, it is strategic incompetence. The Zulu hunt survivors for days, methodically eliminating any Ndwandwe warriors who might form the nucleus of future resistance. 2 years later, in 1820, Zwide tried again. He assembles another army and invades Zulu territory, determined to avenge his earlier defeat. This time, Shaka employs scorched earth tactics. He orders his people to evacuate before the Ndwandwe advance, driving cattle away, burning crops, leaving nothing for the invaders to seize or eat. Zwide's army marches into a wasteland. They find abandoned kraals, empty fields, and no supplies. As they penetrate deeper into Zulu territory, their supply lines stretch, their warriors grow hungry and disoriented. Then Shaka strikes. The Zulu army emerges from concealment and falls upon the starving, exhausted Ndwandwe at the Mlathuze River. The battle is not close. Zwide's warriors, weakened by hunger and demoralized by the fruitless campaign, are slaughtered. Those who attempt to flee find the river at their backs. Many drown, others are cut down on the banks. Zwide escapes with a handful of followers, fleeing north, his power shattered beyond repair. The Ndwandwe Confederation collapses, its territories and peoples are absorbed into the Zulu nation. The victory establishes Shaka as the unquestioned hegemon of the region. No other power can challenge him militarily. Those clans that have not yet submitted now rush to do so, desperate to avoid the fate of the Ndwandwe. But the Mfecane does not end with Zwide's defeat. It accelerates. The wars Shaka wages create ripple effects that spread far beyond his immediate area of operations. Displaced peoples flee in all directions, seeking refuge or conquest elsewhere. These refugee populations, themselves organized for war, crash into other communities, triggering secondary conflicts. Entire peoples migrate hundreds of miles under military leaders who emulate Shaka's methods. The Nguni peoples scatter across southern and eastern Africa, some fleeing Zulu expansion, others seeking to build their own kingdoms using the military technologies and tactics they learned from Shaka. Mzilikazi, one of Shaka's most talented commanders, rebels and leads his followers north, eventually founding the Matabele kingdom in what is now Zimbabwe. Soshangane migrates northeast, establishing the Gaza Empire in Mozambique. Zwangendaba leads his people even further, crossing the Zambezi River and ultimately reaching the Great Lakes region of East Africa, a journey of over 1,000 miles, driven by the conflicts Shaka initiated. These migrations are not peaceful. The displaced peoples, organized along military lines and desperate for security, conquer and absorb the populations they encounter. Traditional societies without centralized military structures are particularly vulnerable. Some are destroyed entirely, their languages and cultures erased. Others are incorporated into the new kingdoms, their identities subsumed. Historians estimate that the Mfecane results in the deaths of between 1 and 2 million people, a staggering toll in a region where the total population was perhaps 5 to 6 million. Entire landscapes are depopulated. Survivors speak of traveling for days without encountering human settlement, passing through lands where villages once thrived but now stand empty, reclaimed by wilderness. The causes of the Mfecane are complex and debated. Later, scholars will argue about the relative importance of environmental factors, drought, resource scarcity versus political factors like Shaka's ambitions. Some will point to European colonial pressure from the south, the slave trade's destabilizing effects, or broader systemic vulnerabilities in the region's political structures. But there is no debate about this. Shaka is the catalyst. His military innovations, his ruthless expansionism, his refusal to accept any political order that does not center Zulu dominance. These are the immediate causes that transform regional instability into catastrophic warfare. And Shaka feels no remorse. From his perspective, he is not destroying the old world, he is building a new one. The Zulu nation, at its height, controls an area of approximately 11,500 square miles. It fields an army of 40,000 warriors, organized into rigorously trained regiments. It maintains a complex administrative system that integrates dozens of formerly independent clans into a functioning state. The capital, Bulawayo, becomes a marvel of military organization, a vast complex of military kraals where regiments are housed, trained, and deployed. Shaka's personal kraal sits at the center, surrounded by the quarters of elite units who serve as bodyguards and immediate reaction forces. Cattle, the traditional measure of wealth, are counted in the tens of thousands, organized into herds that are themselves military assets, mobile food supplies that accompany the army on campaign. Young women are organized into female regiments that parallel the male structures, serving both social and economic functions. Everything is subordinated to the needs of the state and the will of its king. Because Shaka is no longer merely a chief, he has become something else. An absolute monarch who tolerates no dissent, no independence, no alternative center of power. Power transforms Shaka, or perhaps it simply reveals what was always there. The young warrior who fought for recognition, who proved himself through skill and courage, who inspired loyalty through example, this person does not disappear, but he becomes overshadowed by something darker. Shaka's early reign is marked by relatively restrained violence. Brutal, yes, but purposeful, directed toward military and political objectives. As his power becomes absolute, restraint erodes. He develops an obsessive concern with loyalty and betrayal. Having clawed his way to power from outcast origins, having survived exile and mockery, he trusts almost no one completely. He sees conspiracies everywhere, plots in every whisper, disloyalty in every hesitation. The punishment for suspected disloyalty is death, not just for the accused, but often for their families, their associates, anyone who might carry a grudge or pose a future threat. Executions become routine. Warriors who return from battle without their weapons having thrown them away in flight are killed for cowardice. Those who fail to show proper enthusiasm during royal ceremonies are suspected of secret opposition and eliminated. Shaka's personal life becomes a reflection of his political paranoia. He fathers no acknowledged children, possibly out of concern that a son would become a focal point for rivals plotting succession. He takes wives but maintains emotional distance. His closest relationship remains with his mother, Nandi, the only person whose loyalty he never questions. When Nandi dies in 1827, Shaka's grief is apocalyptic. He orders a period of mourning so extreme it becomes mass punishment. For 1 year, no crops are to be planted, no milk is to be consumed. Pregnant women and their husbands are to be killed, because how dare anyone experience the joy of new life when the king mourns death? Thousands die in the mourning period, either executed directly or starving from the enforced agricultural shutdown. The Zulu nation, at the height of its power, turns inward and cannibalizes itself in an orgy of grief-driven madness. This is when the whispers begin in earnest, quiet conversations among warriors and commanders who have followed Shaka since the beginning, who respect his military genius but fear his increasing instability. The tyrant has become a threat to the very nation he built. In September 1828, while Shaka was distracted receiving a foreign delegation, 3 men approached him. 2 are his half-brothers, Dingane and Malangana. The third is Mbofa, a servant Shaka trusted. They carry spears hidden beneath cloaks. The attack is swift. Shaka is stabbed multiple times before he can react. He falls, blood pouring from the wounds, shock and betrayal written across his face. The men who built their lives on his vision, who rose to power in the system he created, are now murdering him. According to legend, Shaka's final words are a prophecy and a curse. You will not rule this land, brothers. The white man is coming, and he will be your end. Whether he actually speaks these words is unknowable, but the sentiment captures the tragedy of his death. Shaka spends his life building a nation, forging an empire, creating a military and political system designed to resist external threats. And in the end, he is destroyed, not by foreign enemies, but by his own paranoia, his own cruelty, his own inability to transition from revolutionary conqueror to stable ruler. He died at approximately 41 years old, having ruled the Zulu for 12 years. His brothers bury him in an unmarked grave, hoping to erase his memory and prevent his followers from creating a cult around his tomb. But memory is not so easily erased. Dingane seizes power and attempts to moderate some of Shaka's more extreme policies. He allows warriors to marry, reduces the tempo of military campaigns, and tries to create stability. But the genie cannot be put back in the bottle. The Zulu nation Shaka created is fundamentally a military machine. Its economy, social structure, and political legitimacy all depend on conquest and expansion. When expansion stops, the internal pressures become unsustainable. And Shaka's prophecy proves accurate. Within a decade of his death, European colonizers, primarily the Boers, trekking inland from the Cape and the British expanding their imperial footprint, began to encroach seriously on Zulu territory. In 1838, Dingane's forces massacred a Boer delegation, triggering the Battle of Blood River, where a few hundred Boer fighters with firearms defeated thousands of Zulu warriors. The technological gap that Shaka never had to confront European guns and cannon versus spear and shield proves decisive. The British formally invaded in 1879, 50 years after Shaka's death. The Zulu nation, still organized along the military lines Shaka established, still fielding disciplined regiments trained in the tactics he developed, fights with extraordinary courage. At the Battle of Isandlwana, Zulu warriors achieve one of the most stunning victories of the colonial era, annihilating a British column through superior tactics and raw ferocity. But the victory is temporary. British reinforcements, armed with modern weapons and backed by industrial resources, grind down Zulu resistance. By 1887, Zululand was fully incorporated into the British Empire. But even in defeat, Shaka's legacy endures. The Zulu identity he forged, the sense of nationhood, the military traditions, the cultural pride survives colonization, apartheid, and the challenges of modernity. Today, the Zulu are the largest ethnic group in South Africa, numbering over 11 million people. Their language, customs, and history remain vibrant. Shaka himself becomes a complex symbol. For Zulu nationalists and Pan-Africanists, he represents African military genius, the capacity for indigenous people to build powerful states without European guidance, the possibility of what might have been without colonial disruption. For others, particularly those whose ancestors suffered under the Mfecane, Shaka represents tyranny, the destructive ambition of a leader who sacrificed countless lives to his vision of greatness. Both perspectives contain truth. Shaka was a military genius who revolutionized warfare and state-building in southern Africa. He was also a tyrant whose ambitions triggered catastrophic violence and whose paranoia consumed his own humanity. He was born an outcast, a child no one wanted, and he transformed that rejection into a force that reshaped an entire region. He took the beetle the insult meant to diminish him and turned it into the foundation of a nation that would outlive him by centuries. In the green hills of KwaZulu-Natal, where the story began, the wind still whispers through the grass. The homesteads are different now, the political boundaries redrawn countless times, the old world Shaka destroyed long gone. But the thunder of his legacy still echoes. The Ikloa, that simple, brutal innovation, changed not just tactics, but the trajectory of history. The regimental system, the centralized state, the transformation of warfare from ritual to total, these innovations spread far beyond the Zulu, influencing military and political developments across the continent. Shaka proved that African societies could generate radical innovations, could compete militarily with any power in the world, and could build sophisticated states that commanded resources and populations effectively. He demonstrated that the colonial narrative of African backwardness and helplessness was a lie. But he also proved that genius without restraint becomes tyranny, that military innovation without moral foundation leads to catastrophe, that the outcast who rises through ruthlessness may build great monuments, but cannot escape the violence that forged him. Shaka Zulu, the thunder of the South, the forger of nations, the beetle who became a king, remains one of the most consequential figures in African history, not merely for what he built, but for what he destroyed. Not just for his victories, but for the questions his life raises about power, violence, and the price of transformation. In the end, history remembers him not as the outcast child or the grieving son, but as the warrior standing on the hillside with blood on his Ikloa, watching his enemies flee before him, knowing that he has shattered the old world and that nothing will ever be the same. The thunder rolls across the centuries, and we hear it still.